Holy Week is upon us once again. The graces are flowing, the liturgy is rich, and the faith journey of Lent is reaching its climax. Today, we are blessed to have best-selling author Kendra Tierney here to help us celebrate the Triduum like never before. Stay with us.
Welcome to Homeschooling Saints, the podcast that helps you create the homeschool you love for the people you love. Our host is Lisa Mladinich, a Catholic life coach, TV host, best-selling author, and an instructor at Homeschool Connections.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Mladinich. Today we have Kendra Tierney here to teach us how to celebrate the Triduum like never before. Kendra Tierney lives in an It's a Wonderful Lifestyle fixer-upper in the wilds of unincorporated Los Angeles County with her husband, their 10 kids, aged 1 to 18, and some chickens. Kendra is a retired pilot and flight instructor who is putting her English degree to use as a homeschool mom and writer about all things Catholic. Her passion is liturgical living. What began quietly in their home with their children as a way to introduce the lives of the saints and the beautiful history and tradition of our Catholic faith now reaches hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. Through her blog, CatholicAllYear.com, social media accounts, YouTube videos, and many books, including the Catholic All Year Compendium, Liturgical Living for Real Life. She shares how obscure Catholic traditions have helped the Tierneys form a strong family culture and Catholic identity and have fun doing it. We are so happy to have you with us again, Kendra. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Lisa.
Yeah, it's so much fun because you're one of those people that just has incredible creativity and stamina, and you're so invested in living out your Catholic faith authentically and having fun while you're doing it. As your bio says, like, I can't read your stuff without wishing that I could move in with you. Sorry. Too much information. What?
We have a guest room. It currently has my Glowforge laser cutter in it, but if you don't mind noise.
Okay. No, I love the family circus. So here we are. It's Spy Wednesday, and you and your family have already been up to quite a bit in the first couple of days of Holy Week. Catch us up on what you've been doing so far.
Yeah. So Holy Week, I remind my kids, my homeschool kids have the week off, but it's a working week. It's not a vacation week yet. So we really like to spend the beginning of Holy Week, Monday, Tuesday, and today, Wednesday, cleaning the house. We partition it up into parts and we try to get everything. It's our big spring cleaning, but I would never, spring is way too broad. I would never do it. So we have these 3 days cleaning, and it makes me actually get it done. So we can toss, stuff that we don't need and organize things and help keep the clutter under control and be ready for Easter.
Wonderful. That's so smart. I love that because, as you said, if we just say, oh, we'll clean in the spring, it never comes, right? We just don't get there. It's great to have a deadline. I want to read just a quick little excerpt from Catholic All Year, which is just such a popular book and so delightful. If you don't have a copy of this book, everybody, get a copy. You're going to love it. Here's a quote. Aha, and Kendra is showing, for those of you watching us on YouTube, we just got to see the beautiful cover. Okay, so here's Kendra in her book. As the end of Lent comes into sight, I like to focus on one of my favorite things about this time of year, saying the word Triduum. And then she spells it out, Triduum. And when I read that, I realized I've been mispronouncing it my whole life, Triduum. So, and then here she is again. Seriously, how great is that word? It's right up there with trousers, gubernatorial, and ladle. But the Triduum is more than just fun to say. It's also fun to do. End of quote. How many of us have thought of the Triduum as being fun? So let's start first, Kendra. What does Triduum mean?
Well, so it's a little bit confusing. It's the shortest liturgical season of the year, and it covers just the end of Holy Thursday into Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and then it actually goes into Easter Sunday, which is also part of the Easter season too. But it really covers those most important events of Holy Week, and Jesus's passion and resurrection are part of this tiny liturgical season of the Triduum.
Oh, that's really cool. So give us some context for the meaning of Holy Thursday. Let's start with that. What's coming up tomorrow?
Yeah, so Holy Thursday is a really busy day in our house. We like to do what's called the Seven Churches Visitation. And the Seven Churches Visitation is supposed to happen at night in the dark after the Last Supper Mass. And it was begun by St. Alphonsus Liguori in Rome, and he and his buddies would go and visit the seven basilicas of Rome on that evening and visit the altars of repose, which we'll have to back up and talk about what that is in a second. But so that's how this Seven Churches Visitation came to be, to visit these places and sort of mentally be following Jesus along the road of his passion. It is the idea as we go sort of place to place. Walking is really ideal, but nobody walks in LA. And for as long as I've been practicing liturgical living in the home, I've also had little kids and babies. And now that we have teenagers, also some of these late night things feel a little more manageable, but we do still have babies. So we started, I just sort of decided I can't wait until my kids are all grown up. I can't keep waiting until a perfect time. We're just going to modify it a little bit for families. And so we just started going during the day, and we visit 7 different churches. And there's only over 250 churches in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. So we get to visit lots of different ones and of different rites, and different Catholic rites and traditions, which has been really a neat thing to do. So we just pick 7 churches, and it takes hours, and we just we sit in the car and we drive to 7 different churches, and we do two Stations of the Cross at each one, and we get to see different churches, and we're really sort of spending that time together, because sometimes when you're just staying home, it just makes it feel like another regular day. And so in order to highlight it, we have these traditions that we do every year. So we know this is the Triduum. This is these special days that we are really focusing on. They're not regular days. So yeah, with the Seven Churches Visitation is really great. If you really can't get out, last year, everything was closed. So I picked great churches of the world, and we found churches that you can do a virtual tour of, and that was still pretty cool to get to scroll around online. So if you're really not able to get out, but I recommend doing the real thing if you can.
Wow, I love that. And in your book, you mentioned sometimes the church is closed, so you do your stations outside. But there's something else that you acknowledge at every church, whether you can get right in front of it or not. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we play Find the Tabernacle at every church, which is sort of a joke, 60s churches concession. Because sometimes the tabernacle is frustratingly difficult to find, and you have to creep around and behind walls and try to find Jesus. So we go in, we find the poor box, and we make a little donation. If we can find candles, we light a candle. We find Jesus and genuflect. And the idea is that after the Mass of the Last Supper, which happens in the evening, they take Jesus from the tabernacle, they take the Eucharist from the tabernacle in order to signify that he is gone. He is, after the Last Supper, after his arrest, he's away from us. And it's really beautiful and meaningful, I think, tradition. So Jesus is taken away and set up in what's called the altar of repose, and it has to be in a different location. So you'll often find it if you're going to try to do these, do the real thing at night, which I think seems really cool. But if you're going to try to do the real thing at night, you'll have to look in, a parish hall or some other location where Jesus will be in the tabernacle in the altar of repose. And so, but since that hasn't happened yet, we just find the actual tabernacle and kneel for a few minutes in prayer there, and then find the Stations of the Cross. It's a really neat way, I think, emphasize the fact that even though there are so many different styles of church, there are so many different types of architecture, but there are things that are constant. In every Catholic church that you go into, you can find the tabernacle, and in every Catholic church that you go into, you can find the Stations of the Cross. So it really highlights the universality of the church, even though the architectural choices are not all my absolute favorite.
Right, exactly. And just for those of you who may not be familiar with the Stations of the Cross, there are 14 stations. So if you're visiting 7 churches and doing 2 of the stations in each one, as Kendra was saying, this whole thing is to recall that sense of journeying with Jesus and his passion. And so what a beautiful way to link that to the images in each church to continue that progression. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah. And as as I talk to the kids about it, we talk about that Jesus had not only just his 12 apostles, but so many other disciples, so many other followers, and that really he was abandoned by almost all of them one by one. That who was left at the cross was, just Saint John and the Marys, and
right, the Marys.
And so we think about all of those people who fell away, all those people who, as Jesus was suffering, got scared, and we can absolutely understand that. But in our own small way, we want to try to make that up. We want to try to show Jesus, you suffered physically and emotionally, but we want to be with you now, and we want to travel with you on this journey as well as we can.
Yeah, and that just connected with that sense of us running away. We all have our moments of running away from God, and it makes me think of a homily I heard once about the road to Emmaus, with the disciples leaving the holy city in dismay, talking it over. And once they've encountered Christ along the way, he reorients them back to their mission, back to their community. And so sometimes in that running away, God finds a way to redirect us. And so that's just that thought, as you described, that many people fell away. There were very, very few who stayed. And yet that community became very vibrant very quickly.
Absolutely. There is redemption for all of us.
Amen. Amen. Fantastic. All right. What about some other things that you do? I know that you've talked about doing a modified Seder. You have some really cool stories in there in your book.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That's when we get home from our 7 churches, or, if you're doing it at night, it would be before, obviously, but we like to do a Last Supper meal where we sort of try to approximate the foods that Jesus and his friends would have eaten at the Last Supper. We don't attempt, I know some people do a sort of a modified version of the prayers. Since that's not really part of our culture, we don't attempt that. And we, as Christians, are not required to fulfill the obligations of the old covenant, because Jesus is the new covenant, and he has instituted, he is the fulfillment of the old covenant. So those old traditions, while they are beautiful and to be respected and good to know about, good to be familiar with, but we don't, in our home, we don't actually attempt the prayers and ceremony of an actual Seder. But we like to have lamb and flatbread and bitter herbs. We like to talk about, there's an applesauce-like dish called haroset that they eat in a Jewish Seder, represents the mortar that they used to build the buildings when they were in slavery. And the bitter herb salad is meant to remind them of this bitterness of this time in Egypt. So there's just a lot of meaning behind, and the sacrifice of the lamb, and how Jesus is the fulfillment of that sacrifice. And you can actually look back and see that, the things that happened to Jesus along Holy Week align perfectly with, with the days upon which different things would happen to the sacrificial lamb who would be sacrificed for Passover. It's really a beautiful confluence, the way that God has worked out this story for us, this sort of tapestry of the Old Testament coming to its fulfillment in the New Testament. So, and plus it's a really delicious meal. And, we do a handful of these feast type meals that the kids really look forward to, where we have the same thing every year. And for us, Holy Thursday is one of them. And everybody gets in on it. We listen to music. There's a beautiful Israel in Egypt by Handel is this like choral, this amazing choral piece where they sing in a way that brings to mind each of the different plagues. It's very cool and perfect for Holy Thursday.
Wow.
Or you can always listen, to the soundtrack of the Prince of Egypt is also a good one for that day. And that's a great movie too. If we have time, we usually run out of time, but we always mean to watch the Prince of Egypt. We usually have to, catch up on it later. But yeah, so we have this family meal where we all work together to put it together, and it's a much fancier meal than a usual weekday meal for us. And then we wash each other's feet. And I know that happens at Mass, and we usually go to the Mass as well. But I feel like it's always this like slightly awkward happening at Mass, which is fine. It's good that it happens there. But I think in a family, I think you can feel more what it would have been like for Jesus and the apostles, that for your dad to kneel down and wash your feet, your stinky teenage feet, that's very, I think that gets to the heart of that we are serving one another, and we know each other, and we have a hierarchy, and yet we are meant to have a servant's heart for each other, and to wash each other's feet, and everybody picks a name out of a hat, and that's the person whose feet you wash. And it's always funny and silly, but it is also very meaningful, and you really get, I think, that sense of what this day was like for Jesus.
I think that's the genius of everything about your book. And you've moved me almost to tears just describing that it's more like what Jesus and his apostles would have experienced being in a family. That just touched me so deeply. That opened it up in a whole new way. And I think that's why this bringing the liturgical year into the way we live together is so powerful. Oof, wow. There's also something kind of comical in this section in your book. There's a treat that you make.
Yeah, so we, for dessert, always have a Rice Krispie lamb. And lamb cakes are this traditional sort of, grandma has a mold of a lamb cake, and they look, if you want to laugh, Google lamb cake, because they are hilarious. And, you end up seeing ones where like somebody tried to outline their eyes with black and it's weeping, and they have these like creepy black tears. I mean, it is easy to mess up a lamb cake, and that's fine. If you want to make a weird lamb cake, I am super there for that. That is great. But we make a Rice Krispie lamb, and those come together. You can get yourself a weird lamb cake in a fraction of the time by using Rice Krispies. So I just make a big giant batch of Rice Krispie treat, and sort of or one of the kids now, mold it into a Rice Krispie lamb, and boom, you're all set. So yeah, we really. And then there's actually another service that's particular to the Triduum that happened. It happened in all churches from at least the medieval era through the liturgical reforms, until the liturgical reforms of the 1960s, and it's called the Tenebrae service. And it is based on a series of psalms and other readings that would have been part of the Liturgy of the Hours. And so this Triduum service developed around it, where, as we were talking before about how the followers of Jesus left one by one, there's this traditional candle holder called a Tenebrae hearse. And sometimes you'll see them if you attend an older church, you'll sometimes see these giant, this giant triangular candelabra. And I remember seeing them in Europe and wondering, I wonder I've never seen them use that. because it's only used for 3 nights, for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of Holy Week. And it has 14 candles, 7 going up each side, and then the 15th candle at the top represents Jesus, and the 14 candles on along the sides they're called follower candles. I'd have heard that term, that sometimes you call all candles that sit on the side of something follower candles. And it's because they represent the followers of Jesus. And as you do these readings, the candles are blown out one by one, which represents Jesus's followers leading him. And at the end, we're left with just the Christ candle after the last reading. And that's removed, taken away, either taken out of the room or put under the altar if it can't be seen. And then there's a stripticus. I can't remember exactly how to pronounce it. I only see it in writing because I'm the only one talking about this. But yeah, no, I'm not. There are some churches bringing back this service, which is really, really cool.
We had it and 2 years ago. Yeah. We had it. It was gorgeous.
Yes. So wonderful to have it in this darkened church, and this loud noise that's supposed to represent the earthquake and the curtain being torn. And then the Christ candle is brought back, showing us that, that Christ's light triumphs. And again, this is something that happens late at night. It's a really long service, worth it, but a really long service if you're doing it at church. So we have come up again with a modified version with shorter readings, and you can get that if you search for Tenebrae on my blog. I have a free PDF download that you can print out of the shortened version of the readings that we do. And I actually also have Tenebrae candelabra sets. Might be I don't think I could get them to you in time now, but for next year, if you want to get one, I have wooden Tenebrae sets, but you can just find yourself 15 candles, and even if they're just little tea lights, and line them up, and it's really moving for the kids. I didn't grow up with stuff like this, but I see it in my children and how moving it is to have flame and smells and all these different sort of get to them through all of their senses, and it's so meaningful. But it's just such a beautiful ceremony to watch these candles go out one by one. And again, to define this Triduum as here's this thing that we do each of these nights. And it's so special and unique.
Wow. Yeah, no, just lovely. And it makes me wonder too, even though it wouldn't be during Holy Week, if somebody did order your beautiful wooden Tenebrae candelabra, I just think through this Easter season, it almost feels like we could do what we do with Christmas and maybe just take our time with some of these things. Of course, it makes sense to do it on the days. Those have incredible significance. But I would think there would be other opportunities to just break it open and do a unit, And the other thing, too, that I've noticed as a catechist over the years is that children love fire. Even the most wiggly worm kid will sit and stare into a flame. You can actually hold their attention.
Oh, it's absolutely true. If you want your kids to be quiet during prayers, light a candle. They are moths. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And this, we use a candle snuffer to put them out. And so that takes, you have to practice your coordination. You got to hold it and you got to get it on there slowly. It's great. It's good. It's good practice on a lot of things.
Yeah. So the following morning, Good Friday, you have a really special tradition. Tell us about that.
So our Good Friday is one of the only 2 required days of fasting we have left. What people don't know is that there are a lot of recommended fasting days that we don't talk about. But if you're ready to level up a little bit, you can also do all the recommended days of fasting. But Good Friday is actually still a required day of fasting. But in this sort of slightly confusing liturgical tradition, the traditional food for the morning of Good Friday is hot cross buns, which are basically cinnamon rolls that are, like sort of a roll of a bun-shaped cinnamon roll with an icing cross on the top. And when I first heard about that, it's like, that doesn't seem right. But
but festive.
Right. But for a fasting day, we're permitted one regular meal that would normally be, for us, dinner is your full meal. And then you also have 2 collations, which are 2 smaller meals that when put together don't add up to one full meal. So it actually having something that you really like for your morning collation is in its own way sort of more of it is its own sacrifice, because you just have, we make these, we make them, I make them the night before with the kids, and there are these little buns, and we each have 2, and that's it. You can't have more, even though you want to have more.
Exercising restraint.
Yes, exactly. You have to exercise restraint. And then, but yeah, so we have hot cross buns. If you don't want to make hot cross buns from scratch, you could really use anything. You can go get Hawaiian rolls from the store. You can, make biscuits or use cinnamon roll dough. But just, make sure that it is a modest size and it has a cross on it, even if you just cut it in with a knife and you kiss the cross, and then you eat the hot cross bun. Which that's how we start the morning. And I always encourage people. I really encourage people. We are homeschoolers, so we get to set our own schedule. So that's good. But I really encourage people, whose kids are in school or who work, to really try to find a way to have that day not be like any other day. And, when people ask me, I say, if my kids were in a regular school, I would keep them home from school that day. I would take a personal day, because I like to think of it, we want to put ourselves in that moment. We want to think about, here's a loved one that we know is going to suffer and die today. And if that was my father, if that was my brother, how would I be behaving during that day? And especially, maybe I couldn't, if it was somebody far away, maybe I couldn't actually be by their side, which would be ideal. But if I knew that my loved one was suffering and dying that day, I would do the minimum things. I would feed my children, I would get dressed, but it wouldn't be a normal everyday day. I wouldn't go to work. I wouldn't, go to, an amusement park. It would be at the forefront of my mind all day. So how can we recreate that feeling at home? So we don't do school. We finish getting the house tidied up. We finish, the preparations that we need for the day and for what we're going to have for dinner. But then we just try to keep, and it's really the one day of the year that I really try to keep all of my crazy rambunctious kids kind of quiet for the day, and especially from noon to 3 when Jesus was hanging on the cross. And so we'll go out and we'll go for a walk, or we'll sit down and do Stations of the Cross coloring pages. We'll listen to an audio version of the story of the Passion from an audio Bible. But just things, and if you need to send the kids outside, I remember when I was first discovering liturgical living in the home, I was reading a book called The Year and Our Children by Mary Reed Newland, which is a great 1960s era liturgical living, that sort of the previous run of liturgical living in the home being really popular. And she said that she always sends her boys out to muck the chicken coop on Good Friday so they can have something to do and be quiet. So, you can come up with some sort of a chore, but just so that the day feels different, so that the day feels quiet and meditative. And for some people, meditation, for some kids and for some adults, meditation is going to work best, when you just let them sit quietly. But then other kids are going to need something to keep their bodies occupied so that their minds can think. I'm more of the latter. So I have something scheduled, something that I can kind of mindless that I can do with my body so that I can be thinking. And especially if you're able to walk to your church, we really love doing that. And ours is, a mile and a quarter away, which is a really good length. Even little kids can handle that. And it's, it's a long plodding walk, and we do it all the way down there, and we kind of catch part of whatever of the services are happening at church, and we stay as long as we can be, quiet and mindful. And then we head back up the hill to our house, walking, and we'll say the rosary. But it's just that feeling of today is a very unique and different day of any day of the year.
Yeah. I even love that you said in your book that you wear kind of somber colors. That there's just this sense that, and there's something about costuming too. There's something about changing the way you look that actually does set a tone. And I thought that was really smart. But yeah, hearing the story again, taking the walks, having things be different. That's just so smart.
Yeah. And you're right. Changing how we're dressed and what we see. And, I usually wear bright colors. And so for the kids to see me in all black, it looks different. And again, it's nothing hard and fast, and I'm not going to go out and buy new clothes for people to manage this, but it's just it's a mindfulness.
Yeah. I love it. Love it. Okay. So step us into Holy Saturday.
Yeah. So after 3 p.m. when we know that Jesus has expired, has died on the cross, things change a little bit. There is sort of a slight lifting of that somberness. We do a fish fry for our Friday night dinner. We do our last Stations of the Cross. And then on Holy Saturday, that is our day of preparation. And again, I love trying to put myself in the mindset of what was happening there. And so I think about Mary, and I think about what would Mary have been doing on this day. She's just gone through the most painful, heart-wrenching day any mother could imagine. And now it's over, and she's home, and she knows Jesus, and she trusts God, and she knows that somehow it's going to be okay. And maybe she doesn't know exactly how, but she knows that the words that God spoke to her are going to be fulfilled in some way. So I imagine that she went home and she cleaned herself up and she dusted herself off, and she got the house ready because she figured somehow Jesus was going to come back, and she would have been preparing some foods, and she would have been preparing her home to welcome him. And so that's what we do on Saturday. We avoid celebrations of Easter. We avoid Easter egg hunts, and it's so tempting to do those on that nice Saturday. But we don't do any of that. We stay home and we put away we clear out all of our Lent decorations. We dye Easter eggs. We decorate our homes, and we prepare food for Easter on that day.
That's lovely. That's lovely. All right. So since we don't really have time to do a whole thing on just Easter Sunday and all of that, what's one or two key thoughts you'd like to leave with us as we're heading in that direction?
I think that the important thing to remember is that, especially if you gave it a good go on Lent, if you did if you tried to do those 40 days of Lent with your kids and with yourself, if you held yourself to some standards, make sure that you celebrate the whole Easter. It's not just one day. There's 40 days of Lent. We have 50 days of Easter. So I really encourage everybody to find a way to make Easter feel celebratory for that whole time. So, just little things like we don't pack up the plastic Easter eggs, or we also have little wooden decorative Easter eggs. We let the kids play with those the whole time, and they can put new Easter candy in the eggs and hide them for their brothers and sisters. When they run out of Easter candy, they can put goldfish crackers in them. And to just try to have fun outings or family movie nights or things, and special meals and special treats to set that Easter season as we made it through Lent and now we're going to celebrate.
Yeah. Wonderful. I love the rhythms are so incredible. And every time the children go through them with you, they're experiencing them on a deeper level, at a different developmental level, and God is speaking to their hearts in new ways. Everybody go to CatholicAllYear.com to find Kendra. And Ignatius Press sells her very big best-selling book, The Catholic All Year Compendium. So look out for that. Grab yourself a copy so that you can have as much fun as the Tierneys are having all year round. Kendra, thanks a million. It's always just a delight to have you, and I hope we'll be able to have you back again soon.
Yes, I hope so. So much fun.
God bless you.
Have a happy Easter.
Thank you. You too. That's our show for today. Our program is sponsored by homeschoolconnections.com, where you can get online courses for your grade school, middle school, and high school student. Learn from the experts and make your homeschooling easier. Be sure to leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. And we'll see you next time here on the Homeschooling Saints podcast.